All right. Well, good evening to everyone on. Thank you for joining us tonight on the locker room. We do apologize for our late start tonight. We had a little bit of a slight tech issue because, as you know, Facebook does what it does, and these YouTube pages they do what they do sometime, but we're able to get it rectified. So we have a wonderful, clear, clean broadcast for you tonight, and we have an exciting broadcast tonight. What we're going to talk about, and I have some wonderful guest panelists tonight who are going to be with us. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to introduce them and get started. And so the first person I want to bring on is the love of my life. She is my wife for life. I love her. I appreciate her. I have been with her for 23 years. We have 4 children. We have 3 grandchildren. And I have to tell you, I love her. I love this woman. I would not be where I am. I would not be able to do the things I do without her. Without her. And God has assigned her to do life with me. She is his gift to me, and I appreciate it, and I love her. And she is my co-host and a panelist tonight. So I want to bring on to the locker room stage Miss Tonette Troublefield. How are you doing, Miss T?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight to co-host with you.
All right, all right, awesome, awesome. So next person I want to bring on, I met this gentleman. Oh man, maybe a couple months, maybe a month ago, maybe a couple months ago. I met him online on a social media app called Clubhouse, and we crossed paths by ways of being in clubhouses that Bishop Greg Davis and others have that he's connected to, and we just kind of clicked. I mean, we just kind of clicked, and I loved him and appreciate the things that he and his wife are doing up there in Detroit, Michigan. They're doing some amazing things, and he is a powerful man of God in the word and in prayer and in the prophetic. And he's a powerful man of God also when it comes to the community and when it comes to business and in the health. He's also in the health and medical field. And I tell you, I am blessed to have made this kingdom connection with him. And so I want to also bring onto the locker room stage my friend and brother, all the way from Detroit, Michigan, Pastor Linwood Beal. Pastor Linwood, how you doing, sir?
Doing well tonight, man. Thank you and Miss Troublefield for having me on the locker room. I would rather be nowhere else tonight.
Man, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Last but not least, this man of God, I tell you, is a absolute gift, not only to Western New York, but he is a gift to the kingdom. I've had the chance to experience his ministry and to hear him preach and teach the word, and just doing so many great things, not only in the city of Buffalo, but abroad. And that's what makes him such a gift to the kingdom, is that God is using him some of everywhere, even using him internationally. And I am honored to know him, to be connected, and I'm honored that he was able to have the time to be with us tonight. And so I also want to bring onto the locker room stage the pastor of the Prince of Peace Church on the west side of Buffalo, Pastor Gabriel Gauthier. Pastor Gauthier, how
Man,
are you?
I'm good, sir. Lady T, Blair, Prophet Linwood, honored to be with you all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a little bit behind, but we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. And so tonight we are talking about the power, privilege, and posture of influence. We now live in a generation and in a time where technology is driving everything. Information is coming to people in faster ways than it has ever probably happened before. I remember a time where to know anything, you had to watch the news or you had to read the newspaper, or you had to talk on the phone with some of your friends or you talk to your neighbors. And that's how you had to get information. And now we've come to a point where all you need is a smartphone and you can know just about anything you want to know. You don't need a newspaper. You don't need the television anymore. You can literally get it in seconds. And one of the things that is also happening is that a lot of people are, if you look at different profiles on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these other apps that touch the world, a lot of people are describing themselves as digital content creators. And also they're calling themselves digital influencers and they're calling themselves social media influencers on so many different subjects. And a lot of these people have a lot of followers and people who are subscribing to their pages. They're watching their videos, they're reading their posts, and they have garnered a lot of attention on themselves and what they do. And so they are influencing people. And so when we look at all of that, I want to use this one quote here. It's a very short quote, but it spoke so powerfully. And it says this. It says, influence does not require position. I'm going to say that one more time. Influence does not require position. And so I want to go ahead and I want to start with, I took myself off. There we go. And so I want to go ahead and I want to start with Pastor Linwood, and then I want to go to Lady T and then Pastor Angel. And so I just want to ask you, when you look at that quote and you read that quote, what does it say to you?
You want to just jump in because
we're gonna go Pastor Linwood, then Lady T, then Pastor Angel.
Okay. So for me, first of all, thank you again, Blair, for having me, man. I really appreciate it and honor you and Lady T tonight, as well as my dear friend and brother I just met, Pastor Gabriel. Listen, for me, when I think about the quote that influence does not require or is not require position, I think straight to the African American church, who has been the pillar of our community for so long. And we place so much emphasis on titles and positions. And we look for our influence in the community to come from certain places where it does not today. A lot of times, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I have to be honest. A lot of times we don't see our community leaders especially from the church, pop out until there's a photo op now. We don't see them pop out until there's an opportunity to speak to a specific need at a specific time. Wherein when I grew up, you saw our leaders in the community, and it didn't have to be a back to school drive. It did not have to be turkey giveaway before Thanksgiving or Christmas. You saw leaders in the school being leaders. You saw them being influencers by just popping up. I remember my pastor when I was 8-9 years old, and we talk about mega churches now in present day, but back in the early 80s, you're talking about down in Suffolk, Virginia, right outside of the Tidewater area, right there in the Tidewater area. You're talking about a church that had 800-900 members showing up on a Sunday, but he knew the need to be present in young men's life. He would pop up at their school. He would pop up at their games. He would pop up at different things that meant something to them and their family. And that was the influence. But now because we devalue leadership, we devalue the church, we devalue positions. Anybody can jump online and make a statement. They can wear something with a catchy slogan. They can grab hold to a fashion trend, and they can just run with that and be an influence over the people that we once influenced. And watch this, Blair. What I know about influence is influence doesn't always have to be positive. That's why it doesn't require a position in order to have. Anybody can be an influencer by drawing people to whatever it is that their platform is promoting. That's why it really doesn't require a position or even, watch it, a standard.
That's good.
I'm next.
Yes, you are next.
I'm sorry. So it is. I mimic with what Pastor Linwood said as well. It does. It may not require a position, but influence should definitely have some type of character. And I look at it as if you're applying for a job. You're looking for a job, maybe in administration or in some type of leadership, or some type of position, whatever it may be. It's what is behind the duties of that job and of that posture. It's not a position; it's a posture that you hold. So even as an administrator, you're representing, you're administrating, you're doing the different works. But what's the posture that you should have? What's the what's happening behind the scenes? How is your character even as an administrator? So even piggybacking off of Pastor Linwood, as far as the church, and I'm not bashing at all, it's the posture. We're so title driven, and we're looking for that validation in those titles and in that position. But a lot of times the positions that is held is being neglected. So going back to character, what is the character behind your influence is what I would say. What are you representing? Who are you behind in the posture, standing in the posture of the influencer? It's a real if we really be honest and we kind of look at who we are, it really tells who we are, and it tells who we are by how we influence others. So it's like what's inside is now being shown outside, if that makes sense.
Good. That was really, really good. Come on, Pastor Angel. Pastor Gabriel,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
you're fine. You're fine. That's my middle name. That's my dad's name, so I'll take it. You know, I don't think there's a lot I can add. Um, the only one ingredient I think I can add to this is influence. It's not title driven because it's a responsibility. It was never supposed to be a title. Being influential is the responsibility to affect change in someone's character, as the Oxford Dictionary defines it, is the power to affect change in character, behavior, and or pattern or way of living. And so when you talk about being influential, um, that's what we think or we equate to success, right? Like, oh, okay, I got this, so that is why I have a follow. I can garner a following. But really, in God's eyes, and as I think as proclaimers of the gospel, our first perspective is always, what does the word say about influence? And if you look at Judges chapter 6, Gideon had no following. He was by himself. He was threshing wheat in a wine press. That means think about it. You make wine in a wine press. You crush grapes in a wine press. You don't thresh wheat, but he's maximizing what he has in a season of limited resources. And because God can trust him in a season of limited resources, then he can trust him to be influential over not. I was doing the math myself. He started with 32,000 men. Think about it. You get 32,000 men to follow you to fight who have never fought with you before. And he says, I'm the least in Manasseh. We're the weakest tribe, but yet God makes him influential. Why? because he can trust him. He can trust him to affect change in the character of men who are trying to set themselves free from their enemies. And at the end of the day, we all have to know influence is not a pulpit, it's not a privilege, although it looks like a privilege, it is a responsibility. And
Mm-hmm.
we are all, as children of God, responsible to be influential, to be influential over the unbeliever, to be influential. Let's bring it back home. Be influential. You don't need, especially I'm a dad of two girls, 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. They don't know me as pastor. They know me as dad. My
Mm-hmm.
job is to be influential to them, to be the first source of influence in their lives, to be influential with my wife, to be influential with my family members. I love what Pastor Linwood said, to be influential over fatherless boys, fatherless men who need a voice, need direction, need clarity. And so as I walk in that responsibility, the fruit of my life is going to produce what it's going to produce. I don't need a title. I don't need you to call me. I don't need you to call me this, that, or the other. I don't need the following. Matter of fact, I believe, and I'm sorry for extending or belaboring this point, but I believe some of the most influential impact happens offline. It never happens online.
Yeah.
It'll happen in the back of a church, in the after the whole church has left, after those little conversations that happen after church services. Some of the greatest influential conversations, life-changing conversations,
That's good.
happen in those moments. Some of
Mm-hmm.
the greatest influential conversations happen on the street corner, as you thought you were just going to the corner store for some 2% milk, and you bump into a man who's
Mhm.
who's lost or at the end of his rope, and he just he doesn't know you from Adam, but yet your conversation was influential to impact and affect change in their life and their behavior.
Yeah.
Wow,
Good.
that was awesome what each one of you said, and you guys really walked me right into the next part here, and I want to throw this up on the screen because you all spoke on it to some degree, and it says this. It says you don't have to be a person of influence to be influential. In fact, the most influential people in my life are probably not even aware of the things they've taught me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really speaks to what all of you said, that really we're all influencing people of some point to some degree, whether we really know it or not, because people are always watching, they're always looking, and someone is taking everything that you say, they're watching everything that you do, and sometimes they're actually listening and applying it. And so that makes influence really a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the privilege of influence, talk to me about how important it is to understand that to be in a place to influence people, communities, cities, organizations, what have you. How important is it to really um, treasure the privilege that you have to sit in such a powerful place? And so, come on, Lady T, talk to me, and then we'll go Pastor Gabriel, and then Pastor Linwood. Tell me about how important it is to really, really um, treasure the whole idea of that privilege to be able to influence people.
I believe it's a great honor. I have, as my husband know, I have a T-shirt line, and it says "Shush, just demonstrate," and it's a lot of talking that's going on. We hear a lot of, you remember in the days it was "Do as I say, not as I do," but we are in a time that, we a lot of talking is not even necessary. We need demonstration. And I recall, growing up, I had grateful to have both parents in my home, but I also had a village, and I watched how my village, how they demonstrated life to me. So, learning how to cook, learning how to clean, learning the word of God, learning, the
Mm-hmm.
different aspects, learning the characters that we are to have that will keep us afloat so we can be able to demonstrate instead of just talking about what we would like to do. I want to do this, I want to do that, but you know those different statements, but you don't see the action. So what I'm grateful is that we have, and I have been afforded the opportunity to have God-fearing parents. Not that they were perfect, but I know they were God-fearing. Have that God-fearing community. The people of my church, some even in business, God-fearing and believers, that they demonstrated. They may have told us and explained some things, but it was more demonstration than it was more demonstration than conversation. And so to have that type of upbringing and learning experience now, it allows me to, mimic, so to speak. We understand, and even my parents, my father, which had eighth grade education, ultimately became a teacher of the teachers of Sunday school, learning how to read and things like that. He started to demonstrate, and then ultimately, not only was he teaching the teachers, he became a business owner of a trucking company. So it's those things that he, while there was the conversation, Tony, do this, Tony, I don't want you to do that, but he demonstrated those things, those attributes. He demonstrated those to teach us. Now, this is how you do it. This is how, you go to the Word of God. I will say, Dad, where is this found in the Bible? He'd be like, find it yourself. So, and my parents were good for saying, I ain't gonna be here forever. Well, they're not here. They're going on to glory. So now I'm here, and I say I may have some questions, but he gave me the attribute how to look in the Word and find it for yourself. How to sit and hear from the Lord yourself. How to, how to do business, whatever it was, those attributes and the demonstration that they gave us. So it's not no longer just do as I say and not as I do. No, stop talking. You can explain it, but now do what I did. The demonstration is there. So it is a privilege to have had that.
Awesome. Go on, Pastor Gabriel.
Lady T, let me just applaud you in that statement, because hashtag demonstrate. If y'all are watching, you need to just hashtag that right there. I think she said it all. If I can just add, demonstrate means watch the fruit of my life. It is amazing to me, and this is coming from a millennial. I'm on the tail end of the millennial. It is amazing to me how many people will model their lives off of people who have no track record of proven fruit. They have no fruit of self-control. They have no fruit of temperance. They have no fruit of patience. They have, let's put we love the scriptures, we lead, but let's talk common sense. You have no fruit of success. You have no fruit that you waited on your spouse. You waited for the perfect. You waited on having kids. You waited for the job. You didn't just rush into a business opportunity, but somebody that would have a proven. If you are hearing this tonight, you need to know you are influential. And because you are influential, everybody is influential on some level. That's why this particular author says, I was being influenced and they didn't even know it. I didn't even give them the credit for it. So there's two extremes to this. Number one, I can be the influencee, being influenced, and not even know that I'm making my decisions based off of somebody else's life who has no verifiable proof of success. Now, on the other side, I may be living a life and I don't even know that my life and my chaos can be multiplied or can be passed down to somebody else simply because I'm not taking accountability for my own decisions. Paul told, now let's bring it full circle to scripture. Paul tells Timothy, follow me as I follow Christ. The apostle Paul also added to this. He said, I don't just come with the eloquence of words. Come on, Lady T. But I come with the demonstration. I come with the fruit of what I'm saying. If I say that it's time to get it right, you're going to see that righteousness in my life. If I say you should wait, you're going to see patience produced in and through my life. And simply because of that, we need to know it is our responsibility. Even further, it is our due diligence to make sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. And nobody has, only God can judge me. Well, that's true. God will judge you, but people are watching.
Yeah.
People are watching to see how you live, to see if they can model their lives after something that looks successful. And let me just pre-warn you here, not everybody online will show you their failures. They
Yes.
will only show you their success. They will only show you where they're winning. They will only show you the highlight reel. That's why it's called reels now. It's
Hmm.
not called sad moments. It's not called bad moments. It's called reels. Show me, make me laugh, entertain me. Show me how to, it's the TikTok generation. Show me
Hmm.
the hack. There is no hack to this. You
Yeah.
can't circumvent the process. You can't just cut the corner. You have to produce the fruit to get the result.
Hmm. That's good.
Wow.
Good stuff.
That's hard to follow. It's so good, it's hard to follow. But let's think about in pop culture when we first started to hear the word influence. Where did we first start to hear that word? It was after the Kim Kardashian radio tape.
Mm.
All right.
Mm.
Kim Kardashian had nothing attached to her name except for a famous father. There was no, when you watch the Kardashian show, when you watch the things that they put out, there's no talent there.
Yeah.
There's no substance there. But they're influencing a generation simply by showing a lifestyle that's not the reality for most.
Come on.
So somebody gonna get this before we go offline. They're showing a reality that's not a reality for most, but they're showing something that people want to attain.
Mm.
People want to attain a level of influence by doing the least possible, wherein the people who have the most impact, not influence, but impact, do
Mm.
so unaware by doing the most.
Come on.
See, I can attest to what Lady T said because my father, and watching my father with very little education ascend to the heights that he did in life was influential to me, which brought me to be a first generation college student.
Wow.
First and only of my siblings to attain a college degree. See, we have to be careful what we allow not only to influence us, but to have impact. Because as Pastor Gabriel and Pastor Linwood and Lady T and Blair sit before you and discuss this tonight, it's going to impact somebody's life. It's going to influence them one way or another. And what we have to do is take the things, take the experiences, take the bouncing ideas and statements off of one another, and we have to be careful in our responsibility of portraying, watch this, a reality that's attainable.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and Pastor Gabriel, forgive me, this is just the pastor that I am.
Yes,
Sometimes,
sir.
even from the pulpit,
Mm-hmm.
we give off a great sermon. We give off great shouting points, but we don't give enough substance that is attainable to life
Come on.
and to the life of the people that we're assigned to pastor.
Come on.
Therefore, we don't have maximum impact or maximum influence in their life. Because to tell someone, watch this, to tell someone to go, to be saved, to trust God, and not offer them any other resource for their life is not
Mhm.
having maximum impact or influence. But in order to have impact and influence, we can't just stand up and preach in the Greek, in the Hebrew, in Latin every Sunday and expect anybody to attain anything or to be influenced. We can't throw out words
Yeah.
and statements and philosophies and scriptures that we had somebody to regurgitate to us, and then we regurgitate it to the people and expect there to be influence or impact. What it takes for us is what our fathers, thank you, Lady T, and our mothers and the forerunners did for us, and to really delve into the lives of the people that are around us, to the people that watch our posts, to the people who read things and quotes that we may say, and the reels that we create. Blair and I are frequent on Clubhouse, and you would be surprised how many people are living their lives based on what they hear on Clubhouse. And we have a responsibility in the little catchphrases, in the little click bites that we sound off and put out into the atmosphere to be a better them tomorrow than they were today.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder sometimes how cognizant we are of that in the way that we approach the things that we say and do as influencers. Because just because you have a mic, just because you have a phone or a camera in your face, does not mean that you are equipped, prepared, strong enough, intelligent enough in this day to influence someone to be the better them tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. That's
wow.
Good. Right.
Wow. That's powerful. Go ahead, Tony. You want to jump in? Go ahead.
No, just backing off of what he just stated is you can have the camera, you can have the influence, you can have all of that. You can have but you can be dangerous.
Yeah.
You can have all of that, and you could be so dangerous, and you can literally lead people to death. If you're not, and even with having influence, it's like, always, my thing is always remaining a student. Everybody, I don't care how big you get or how many followers, are you still a student? Who are you following? Who are you listening to? Who's counseling you? Who's helping you? It's like we've getting some influencers get to a place that they're it. There's no one above. No one can tell you anything, and you begin to lead other people into, lead them astray. You lead them, and this, I believe, to me, it's deception. If you're not constantly learning and constantly renewing your mind and transforming your hearts and being authentic is what's really important here. If you're an influencer, you need to be authentic. You need to tell people, hey, you know what? What you see right now, it may not be all that you really think. Let me tell you how I got here. And even sometimes when we arrive to what we think is the pivotal place, it may not be the place that you're really supposed to be. You have not arrived. We have not arrived as influencers. You don't really arrive until you're dead.
Right.
When you've exhausted everything that's in you, and you've poured out and you demonstrated who you really are, the fullest potential, and you're sharing your truth, not your truth, the truth, with others. I didn't get here overnight. I didn't get my first salon. I didn't start my first salon right away. I had to go through boot camp. I had to be taught. I had to learn. Doing worship, speaking. I had to be taught. But I stayed under, and I stayed committed and submitted under a teacher, under someone that would really speak to me, keep me in shape, whip me in shape sometime, tell me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm right, give me, this is a pointer. I, even to this day, and I know this is not about influencers, but I still submit to my bishop. Why? Because I know that he has walked this thing out, and he's really paying attention, and he want to protect me as well, I believe. And so I submit to his influence, because he's also showed me the character of God.
Yeah.
And I know he won't lead me. I don't believe he would lead me to, astray. So, and that's even in our, whatever factors of and facets of our lives, I believe that influence, the level of influence, we're the best influencers by our lead, by who's led us.
Can I just for a few seconds just follow up there? You said something, Lady T, in the fact that you said you still submit to leadership who has been impactful and influential over your life. and Blair knows me, well enough to say that this is not a brag, but in going all around the country, especially on the East Coast where I'm from, and going to certain conferences, you always bump into somebody who knows you that you don't know, that has seen a video or YouTube clip, or you preach for somebody, they were in the crowd, you spoke somewhere, they were in the crowd, and the young preachers always want to make an impact on you because of the impact that you made on them. So the first thing they do is they walk up to you and they start to speak in verbiage that they believe that would you would receive.
Would impress.
Hey doc, man, I can't, but I can't wait until we can sit down and get together. And the first thing I ask is, who's your pastor? I don't care who they are. I need to know who your pastor is. And I would be very careful in attending a church and following a pastor who does not follow a pastor. I would be very careful in bringing a young preacher in, old preacher in, a middle-aged preacher in, who cannot tell me who has impacted their life, who has impacted their ministry, and who still adds a standard to their lives and their ministry. See, we're in a season where ministry has looked so easy for some of our ministry counterparts, and it also looks so easy for some of our influencers outside of the church, that now everybody believes they can do it. COVID impacted us so much by not allowing us into the brick and mortar that you could tune in on any given Sunday, and people who did not have a platform before COVID now sitting behind the mic with a green screen, preaching and teaching the word of God. And we have to be careful, because everything that's put out there is not good. So we're living in a time where influence and impact have been made synonymous, but they're not. They're at two total ends of the spectrum, because you can have influence over my life and not have impact over my life, and make me so dangerous that I become a danger even to myself.
Yeah.
Pastor Angel, did you want to jump in, or?
I'm enjoying this moment because Lady T, Pastor Linwood, y'all have added so much value, I think, to everyone watching, including my generation. And I speak for a lot of people who want to be professors of a vocation, but refuse to be students of the same. And we always have to remain a student. 1 Kings chapter 18 gives a perfect picture of influence. Elijah's walking through a field, casts his cloak on Elisha. Elisha turns around, runs to the man, and Elijah said, "What did I do to you? What have I done to you? You don't know the power of just rubbing on somebody's shoulder. You don't know the power of just walking. A 5-minute conversation can change the trajectory of someone else's life. So much to the point that Elisha, think about this, owned a family business, burned it, sold its remaining parts, and followed the man for the rest of Elijah's life. He said, I'm going to follow you till I get a double portion of what you have. You know what Elijah said? Become a student first. Be a student first. If you see me when I go up, then you can get this double portion. In other words, you have to remain in the posture of a student in order to get what you're saying. You have to be studied in this. You got to watch the Jordan part. You got to watch how God provides. You got to watch, because there's going to come a time where that person who you're following is no longer going to be there. And then what are you going to be left with? What type of motivation are you going to have? I am personally, my wife and I are third generation pastors, not because Thank God for the prophetic word. Thank God for God using instruments and coming into a church on a Sunday and say, hey, you're going to be a pastor. I had two generations of prophets before me that were highly influential on our lives, that spoke to the man of God in us when we were 5 and 6 years old, spoke to the pastor in my wife when she was 5 and 6 years old, and spoke to her future. And it just shows you, I think the greatest influence never happens online, as it will happen in your house. It will happen by what you model for your children. Parents that are watching, the greatest influencers is not your kid's pastor. It's not your kid's prophet or leader or Sunday school teacher. It is the building, what you are building in your home, the infrastructure that you're building in your home that makes them teachable, that makes them moldable in the hands of the Lord. And if I'm showing my kids, the next generation, because God works generationally, He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So He works generationally. But if I'm creating a false sense, a pretense of what God is, then the next generation is just going to model whatever the world is showing them,
Mm-hmm.
rather than what the house is showing them. What staple of, maybe your parents aren't together, but yet you can still model your life after a responsible father. You can still model your life after a responsible mother. I know plenty of pastors who are married, who have amazing children, who have amazing ministries, and they were brought up by a single mother. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not simply because of the environment that you were grown in, but what that environment showed you, what it cultivated inside of you.
Yeah.
Elijah didn't grow up with parents. He grew up following another man, holding a towel, and say, I'm gonna wait until my time is right. Until that point, I'm gonna remain a student.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I, I've been sitting here and I wanted to just like laugh out loud because everything y'all said has in this particular segment was a total conversation I had today with my friend and brother. It was crazy. And really, Lady T, you started it when you talked about how, and I think it was you and Pastor Linwood when you talked about how dangerous influence can be in the hands of a person that doesn't realize they're dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to ask this question, but I want to throw this out here. And everybody that's watching us right now on YouTube and Facebook, I want you to go ahead and hit that share button for me. Hit that share button for me. And so we can get some more folks in on this live to hear this conversation. So go ahead and share for me one time and ask your other friends and followers to join you so we can get as many people to keep coming in this broadcast as we can. So as some of you may know, and some of you may not, and I was kind of like, do I want to really touch this? But Lady T opened the door, so we walking in. We'll walk in the door. She opened it, we're gonna walk in the door. So as you know, or some of you may have seen, we have a battle going on social media right now. And the battle is going on between influential people and their subliminally and directly through posts and videos talking about a particular topic, and everyone is taking sides. And the reason I bring that up is because me and my friend were talking earlier today. What we started to ask was, because as you start to listen to some of the people that are influencing people, their leaders, their some of them social media stars and what have you, right? So as you listen to them talking and you listen at them going back and forth with each other, okay? And we were talking, and I said, man, I got a question. I said, because I have to ask, who is the donor of the seed to your influence?
Come on.
Because as they were talking, I'm saying, you know what? It sounds like what they're fighting about is coming from a place of trauma, of deep hurt, of unsettled issues in their life. And so, because they may not be able to go at the people that committed the abuse, caused the trauma, what have you, they're just attacking everything and everyone associated with it. Because there's some trauma that hasn't been dealt with. There's some hurt that hasn't been dealt with. But at the same time, you have people who are following you that you're influencing and living their lives through you. And some of them may not realize that you're really just really hurt, abused, and tore up, and you haven't dealt with it. And so the way you lash out is to do what's being done on social media right now. So I want to ask this question. How critical is it to understand where did the seed of your influence come from?
Mm.
Because if you're using your trauma as the fuel to why you say what you say, why you believe what you believe, why you do what you do, why you have and tell others what they should do and how they should handle, you start to lead people down paths that they should not go down. And it's even worse in the church because there's a spiritual connotation to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go ahead and start with Pastor Gabriel this time, then Pastor Linwood, and then Lady Two. And I want to talk about the seed of where your influence come from. Is it from trauma? But I want to talk about how important it is to know where your influence is coming from. And then for the people listening, how do you tell where their influence is really coming from?
That's good. That's a good question. And I think this is a really profound conversation. I think even outside of, and I think it would speak more psychologically, but everything starts seed form. Everything. Eden started as seed form. You know, the earth started in seed form. It was a word. And we always use this. I remember as a kid, we used to use this saying a lot: "Sticks and stones will break your bones, but your words will never hurt me." They won't, but they'll sow a seed, and the seed is enough to change and alter the course of your life. Not today, not today, but maybe 10, 20 years from now, you're going to see the harvest in that seed. And that's why you'll see a lot of people that have gone through things maybe 10, 12 years, 15 years ago, but it's not until recently that they'll feel more comfortable coming out with what happened or the truth of what happened. Seeds take a long time. I believe that's one of the reasons, and just pardon me for continuing to speak about the next generation in a very adamant way about changing the culture, and it is because the enemy didn't start messing with this generation in 2020. He started messing with this generation back in the early 2000s. As their minds were cultivated by MTV, their minds were being cultivated by VH1 at that particular time, BET, and all of these other platforms that created this steady stream of of perversion, this steady stream of chaos, discomfort, and all of these things. Going back to the power of a seed is knowing that seeds, once they're planted, they have to be uprooted. You cannot, you cannot deal with the surface level of a seed. You can't deal with the surface level of whatever that seed produces. Let me give you all an example. In March, March or April, around that time, right around spring. I don't have a green thumb. But my wife wanted some new flowers, some new plants in the front of the house. So I took myself to over to Home Depot with the family and got some new plants. We planted those plants, and I think it was just about a month ago or so. I'm looking, at the plants and I said, what happened here? Like there's some weeds growing up, and it's amazing. This is what's amazing to me. Some of the weeds look like the plant. They liken themselves to the plant.
Mm.
And my daughter said, Dad, how do you know when you're pulling up a weed and not pulling a good flower up or good plant up? And I said, you got to remember the seed. You
Mm.
have to remember the seed, because the seed or the harvest is always going to look like the seed. And that is why we always has to go back to the moment that the seed was planted. A lot of it has to do with mentorship, has to do with dislodging and say, sitting with a mentor, sitting with a Paul, sitting with a leader, sitting with somebody that's influential in your life and saying, these are the areas where I'm deficient, and this is what I was brought up in. These are the areas where I failed, and this is what I was brought up in. Simply because I brought a weed whacker into my garden doesn't mean I dealt with the root issue. And a 5 to 10 minute sermon on Sundays morning is not going to deal with the root issue.
Mm-hmm.
Even you could fall on the ground at church, and when you get right back up, that root is still going to be in there. It is a work that's why Romans chapter 12 tells us, don't be conformed to the patterns of this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You have to set your mind on a new seed. Set your mind on things that are higher than every negative, every adverse, every demonic, yes, I dare say demonic,
Mm-hmm.
every demonic seed sowed by the enemy, sowed by hell, even if it was in your infancy. Young ladies, young men, it don't matter what the seed was. Let me tell you, the seed that was sown by Jesus at the cross of Calvary is greater than any other seed that the enemy can try to plant in your life. Will it take work? Absolutely. But let me tell you, like we know 2,000 years ago, that same blood that had power 2,000 years ago still has power today to break every root of inconsistency, instability, perversion, whatever the root cause is. Distrust.
Mm-hmm.
Distrust. The whatever's coming up, distrust is coming up. God has the power to uproot that by his spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's
Come on,
good.
Lady T. I think you were next. I think.
Nope, it was actually me.
It was, okay, good. Sorry, Pastor Linwood. Go ahead.
No, listen, I just want to again, man, Pastor Gabriel, that was so
That was
good.
good. Yeah.
And I'm hesitant a little bit because I feel like Blair brought me in here because he knows my perspectives are sometimes a little different. But man, this one about to get me in trouble, and I'm gonna blame you.
That's why I take the blame.
Listen,
is this the locker room for a reason?
Right, and that's why I was trying to stay away from scriptural references, and I was trying to stay away from taking this thing to church because I know we got some viewers that might not be churched, but I just got to be who I am. The Bible tells us in Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And when we start talking about seed in our community, we're usually talking about money. We're usually talking about a tithe or an offering or sowing into a word. And that's why some of our biggest influential platforms where Christianity is concerned and influence is concerned come from those who are able to speak to where our treasures lie. They speak to where they know this generation's treasures lie because they understand that people will give to what they need or give to what they believe in, give to what their limited sight has allowed them to see, not even have vision. See, when we are influencers, we're supposed to cultivate not just what people can see, but what they can't see in the physical, they should be able to see spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, financially, in every area of their life. And because we know that, we play on the, watch this, not so intelligence of people, and we start to speak things that are not so much a standard for what the word of God says or what they should be sowing into. We start to sow into their, we start to speak and try to influence into their lack or whatever, in whatever area that is. So we start to tell people that in 30 days you're gonna get approved for the house, or in 90 days you're gonna your business is gonna turn around, or next year this time you won't know life as you see it, because we want to influence them based on their struggle or their lack, rather than influence them based on their potential to do better by sowing a seed of a standard, something that they can follow for the rest of their lives. Instead of giving me a fish, teach me how to fish for myself so that I can fish for the rest of my life and eat. Don't just give me this one fish. Don't just give me this one thing and tell me to fast and pray over this one particular area of my life, but then you allow me to continue to sin and send me straight to hell.
Mm.
You get what I'm saying? So the bottom line is, Blair, the bottom line, Lady Chief, Pastor Gabriel, is that when we're trying to recognize the donor of the seed, we have to understand that if we can trace back to where our treasures are, if we can trace back to where our heart is, then we can identify the donor of the seed that has influenced things over our lives. If you put a iPad in your child's hand at 3, 4 years old, and you know that iPad is going to keep them occupied so that you can go off in other parts of the house and do whatever it is you need to do, and they're not going to hurt themselves. They're not going to get distracted because the iPad has their attention. But then you sit down and have a conversation with them at dinner and talk to them about their day. If they start to speak things that you know you didn't teach, if they start to do things that you know that you don't do, if they start to act in ways that you know that you don't act, then the iPad has come a bigger influencer than you are as the parent. So you can trace back then where the donor or who the donor is. The donor was whatever the programs were that they watched on the iPad, rather than you pouring into them the things that you would want to see. All right. It's the same thing in our adulthood. We can trace back and find out who the donor is of the seeds that have had the most impact and influence on our lives by going back to where we spend our money, to going back to who we sow into, to go back to where our hearts really are and the things that really matter to us. And then we can identify the donors of the seeds in our life.
Wow, that was powerful. Come on, Lady T.
Can you reread that question?
Yes, the question was how do we, or how important is it to know who the donor is of the seed to your influence?
How well is it to know the donor of the seed of the influence? Okay. So let me tell you the thing that came when they were speaking, and I'm sure we all heard the statement "leading while bleeding." I believe that some things. Okay, going back to that, knowing the donor is, you have to have some trust with whoever is planting these seeds. Some way, somehow, some trust has been. They have access to trust to speak, or whatever, however the seed was planted. You gave them that access of trust to be able to speak into you, to say whatever, to do whatever. There was some type of access. And I believe us investigating who's in our surroundings, investigating who speaking into us. There was a statement someone made to me with the situation that I'm dealing with, and they spoke against what I was speaking. They said, you're blind. And I said, no, I'm not. And I said, I'll be wrong if I said return to sender. You wouldn't like that. But it's watching and catching those words and that shade that people try to throw and stuff that they
Yeah.
try to say subliminally, and we catch it in the beginning. Some of us are, I believe, and I'm a, because I'm a church girl. I came from the church, so I speak that. I got a little bit of street in me, but from the church aspect, it's some things that was said, even seeds that was sown by some of the mothers. And because I respected them in their position as one of the church mothers, I did not go against what they said. However, then I go home and I say to my mom, "Mom, such and such said this," and and she'd be like, "No, I'm a checker." But in because of the respect thing, my children now, my oldest is 33, my youngest is 15, but I give them, they know that if someone says something that's contrary to who they are, they can say, with all due respect, even if it's an older person or a younger person, with all due respect, I don't receive that, or I'm not accepting that, because a lot of things could be said, sown into people.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for myself. If things were sown into me at the age of 12, I remember here at the age of 50, and it still hurts. Yeah, but now I have a voice and I can say things. But think about all the years that went by, that
Right.
seed was growing, and regardless of we looking at it, somehow it was watered because it kept growing, because we didn't deal and cut it at the root. So then we get into the places of influence, and now because those seeds of discord and was sown back then, we haven't dealt with them. Now we decide we want to influence somebody else, but we haven't dealt with it, in which it also have corrupted some of our character. Now we want to go, now I'm gonna influence you. So it's leading while bleeding. I have all the things that happened to me that I never dealt with, and I'm gonna come now. I'm gonna heal you. I'm gonna tell you how to get through it, how to go further. But I haven't dealt with the truth of where I've been and what I've dealt with in those word curses, or that pain, or whatever was inflicted on me, that seed that was sown, it grew. It grew defectively. It was a defected seed. But however, it grew, but because I didn't go back and I didn't sever and cut at the core. So I believe as us investigating, who's around us, checking those words that's being sown into us, asking God to show us, because that's where I'm at. Lord, show me who's supposed to be around me, because everybody's not meant for me. Even current people say stuff. Tonette has a smart mouth. The Lord I know I got the Holy Ghost, because I know you would have got it some years ago. However, the Lord really allowed me now, but like, don't say that to me. No, I cancel that assignment.
Come on.
I'm canceling it right now. You're not going to speak that, because I have to walk with that.
Yeah.
I have to live with that. So I choose at this point, Lord, show me who's supposed to be around me. Is it 4 and no more? Is it whatever it may be? I get to it. God has given me, allowed me the authority to cancel those assignments and speak against them and correct them. Bring them into correction. And they may not like it, but I believe, feeling that pain and carrying all of that, those words and all those things, I remember it today. And I should have been able at that time, with respect, as a young girl. You know what? I didn't like what you said.
Right.
That really hurt me. And we know that in those arenas, we were like, you gotta have tough skin. It was correction. No, stop. Yep. It's not. No. We know correction. We know rebuke, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but don't try to minimize it when you said something that caused some
of it was out of order.
And granted, even with being it was an older person, but you was out of order. And like I said, when I tell my mother, she goes and check them. A gentleman, one of the deacons, said something to me when I was young, and I used to tell my dad, he keep bothering me, but he would do something so he can get me, he'll try to embarrass me in front of my friends. And I was like, he always try to do it because, I'm like, he's trying to get me to say something, and then he go back and tell my father. And I was saying, my father's like, my father's old school, and he'd be like, he's a man of God, and he said this. But when my father heard him, he said, my daughter been telling me for years that you've been saying stuff to her. that's inappropriate and out of order. And he said, don't say it again. And he was standing on the altar when he said it. So I was like, he said it in the church. But the point is, it's those seeds that he was sowing to cause discord. And it was hurtful, because now you have my parents like, no, this is a man of God. This is a person of esteem or influence. He wouldn't say that until my dad heard him. And I'm grateful that he did. But it's going back to being able and having that liberty to say to whoever, I'm sorry, I'm taking too long, is telling that person or saying at that time, no, shut it down quickly. Let's cut it at the root, because I know how it can manifest. I know how it can grow. So that's me.
Listen. So with everything that you all have said, so I have to ask this, and we're getting close to our closing and wind down. I have to ask this question. So then, can influence at some point, depending on where the seed of it came from and what's going on with you, right? So can influence become control and manipulation?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes they look the same. And you may not be able to tell which is which necessarily. So as an influencer, can I become a manipulator? And can I dip over into the realm of possibly witchcraft?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have people following and listening to me. So anybody can jump in and start. Pastor Linwood, I think you're
I'm
muted.
sorry, I was muted. Is that's so easy? Because the word of God tells us that the blessings of the Lord make a rich and add of no sorrow. And some of the things that we are following and some of the things that we're giving attention to do the exact opposite. They don't make us rich in any area of our lives, but they add all sorrow. Some of the things that we follow, some of the things that we mimic, some of the things that have captivated us, and we try to make our lives look like, don't add anything. And I think that's been the theme of everything that I've said tonight. If we are influenced by certain areas or certain people or certain things in our lives that bear no fruit, that bear no positivity, that bear no love in our lives, I don't care.
Right.
I dare say this. I don't care whether you're in church or not, or you know Jesus tonight or not. If the things that you're following only bring you to a place of misery, only bring you to a place of pain, only bring you to a place of anxiety, bring you to a place of depression, those are the things that you need to turn and run away from. Not continue to run to. Isn't it crazy to you guys that some of the music of this generation, focuses on, certain aspects of life, but they don't show you that you can attain those things and still be positive. You can't, one thing that I learned early on in life, and most of you don't understand, the background that I come from. I think Blair has heard a little bit, but you don't have to be in the street to attain a foreign car. You don't have to be a street pharmacist to, live in a gated community.
Right.
You don't have to, gain the things of the world by doing the things of the world, because the Bible also tells us that the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. So the things that we listen to, the things that we see, we receive it in our ear gates, our eye gates, and then we regurgitate it out of our mouth. The things in which become, the opposite of influence, the opposite of impact in a positive, they do become manipulation, because they're twisted to have you to perceive or conceive a thing that should be to your benefit that's actually working against you.
Wow.
That's good.
Anyone else
That's
who wants to
good.
jump in, just jump right on in.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think the way you can know manipulation versus influence, or you can determine, rather, the difference. Again, influence is being able to affect change in someone's character. It speaks about being moldable, being teachable. It's for the betterment. Influence always looks to better. Godly influence looks to better and improve, and to push you, thrust you into purpose. The only reason why any human being exists is to be able to accomplish the purposes of God for their life. Anything outside of that is you're going to find people. For example, I wondered why um, McDonald's got so many commercials, and it's because they're not trying to get me to McDonald's today. They're not trying to get me to McDonald's tomorrow. They're trying to get me to McDonald's when I'm the hungriest, and the seed of that commercial comes right back into my memory and reminds me of how crispy those fries were. It reminds me of that person drinking that Diet Coke. You think, I mean, a triple Whopper with a Diet Coke, and it ain't gonna matter. The calorie don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to sow the seed so that when the moment of hunger, of weakness comes, that's when you fall into the trap. The enemy never sows a seed expecting a harvest tomorrow. He knows the law of seed and harvest. He knows that, what you sow today is eventually going to come out in a couple of years. And I want to, and again, I know we're walking a tandem here between being practical and also using practicality and using biblical sound teaching. But Psalm 119 tells us very clearly, the psalmist David said, I have hidden your word in my heart so that I would not sin against you. You know what that means? He says, I took your word and I buried it in I sowed the seed of your word in my heart to make sure that anything that comes up, it's only godliness. It's only the fruits of the spirit. It would only be patience when I feel like I want to get ahead of myself. And the reason why you got to hide it in your heart is because when the enemy always speaks to us, he always speaks to the soulish side of us. He will always speak to the emotional side of you. The emotional side of you will always want to get ahead, will never want to wait, will always be impatient. But yet the Spirit says, wait on the Lord, wait on your turn. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't take the job. Don't get in the relationship. When somebody say, hey, I'm just checking up on you. Well, you can check on me. You can check on somebody else. I'm doing just fine.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to discern, use your spiritual sensitivity to discern when someone's intentions towards you are evil. They're not of good. Jesus told Simon, he said, Simon, Simon, the enemy has desired to sift you as wheat, but I prayed for you that your faith would not fail you. And that is when our faith kicks in. That's when our spiritual and our godly intuition kicks in that says, wait, this is a trap.
Mm-hmm.
This person is setting a trap for me. The enemy is setting a trap for me over here, or this opportunity is a trap. This relationship is a trap. And hear me, it's not going to come. When God blesses you, he does not open up the roof of your house and throw money on the roof. He will send people. When the enemy wants to curse you, he will not open up the floor of your house. He will send people. Just like God uses people to bless you, the enemy will also send people to try to make your life a living hell, or to manipulate, or to talk you into something that God never asked you to do. But like God told Gideon, I tell everybody watching today, go in the strength that God has given you.
Mm-hmm.
Go in the power and in the might, the wisdom that God has already empowered you with, and consistently check your heart. I think it was Pastor Lockwood that mentioned it, Linwood that mentioned it, mentioned about consistently checking ourselves, checking the information.
Mm-hmm.
Lady T talked about checking the root, checking the source of what comes into our lives.
This.
Wow. Come on, Lady T.
So the thing that comes to me is with influencers and in influencing with manipulation and witchcraft. You have to really try the spirit by the spirit, and you have to know if it's of God. A lot of things that's presented to us is like you see it look like lilies all on the beach. Just everything is beautiful and peachy. There's a honeymoon time that's presented like this is going to be grandiose, and you're going to have all the lights, and we're going to give this to you. It's those things like that I look at, because I'm like, my dad used to say, anything worth having is worth working for. And I look at things that you want to just say everything is so grand and so great. I start to look at and notice how a lot of influencers, they'll tell you this is what influencers of any kind, they'll tell you all the good stuff up front. They'll draw you in. Oh, we're gonna send you a bouquet of flowers. We got this, and you're gonna win this, and you're gonna have that. Those are the things that I'm like, no, you better come a little better than that. And a lot of us have learned that through experience. We want to believe that everything is going to be all right, and it will. But however, there's a process that everything takes. We have people that's influencing and using manipulation to get. You see it all over the place. I don't even have to name them. You see them everywhere. We have to, as the pastors, both pastors said, we have to have the discerning of spirits. These days and age, everybody is somebody. Everybody got something. They got a mansion on. They got half of the cattle of God's cattle on the hill. They got all these different things that they say that they have, and they want. I just want to give you a portion. I listened. I was watching YouTube, and they interrupt my little worship session that I was listening to with a commercial and saying, "I made $3 million in 30 days," and I'm like, "You're lying." I hear you. You're lying. But it's like any type of manipulation to pull you in, and that's what we have to be very leery of and watchful and praying that it's in every area. It's not only as I said on YouTube, but it's also in the workplace. It's also in the church place. It's also in the home. It's in so many different areas. We have to be mindful and watchful and praying and asking the Lord, is this for me? Is this not? Because if you say no, I'm good. And I've come to that place that if it ain't for me, God, it's not for me. It's all right. It looks good. I like it, but no, it's not for me. And that spirit of witchcraft, and here we go, days and times that we're in, it's so subliminal. It's like everywhere. It's not only subliminal. Let me just take that back. It's obvious. But it's subliminal tactics that's being used, the manipulation to try to draw you in, the manipulation. If you don't do this, this is gonna happen. I've even heard somebody say, "Well, if you don't sow this amount of money, that the Lord says you're gonna die in 14 days." Stop the games, okay? So we're gonna stop these games. God's not saying that. We're not using those tactics. That's not even the heart of God, like for real. But we having to really be awakened to know, to see that when it's a setup coming into place, see when a seed is trying to come to be sown. We have to really be awakened and not so ignorant, to God gonna take care of me. Yeah, no, but he also said to ask him. He also given us spiritual eyes to see, but we have to ask him, they have to be awakened. We have to make sure we're in contact and staying in God's presence and asking God. He's my CEO. God is my CEO. He's my consultant. God, what's happening? Is this for me or no? Because we also in this time of cloning, GMO, everything is reproduced off of something that was authentic, and we have to know if it's really of God or not. That's all I have to say.
Wow, that was powerful. That was powerful. Because it is important. It is very important to know which is which.
Yeah.
Because influence is influence, then as Pastor Gabriel said and Pastor Linwood, really all of you have said, if influence is really influence, then it really is about the advancement, the growth, the development, and progression of the people who are listening to you that you are influencing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's only working to your benefit, then it's not influence, it's really manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are getting people to buy your classes and buy your online courses, and you know, for a 30-minute session with me, it's going to be $200. For an hour session, it's going to be $500. And if the people are really not getting any better by having these sessions with you, and if the people are not really showing any fruit, then you're not influencing them, you're manipulating them. And you're getting them addicted to something that is not good for them. It's almost like a crackhead with crack. He's addicted to a high, but the high is killing them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's critically important that you have to know, especially as the influencee, we have to be able to know if we're being influenced or manipulated. And the only way you're going to do that is by the power of the Holy Spirit to let you know whether the influence is of God or whether this is manipulation. And so I want to close with this, because I don't know about anybody else, but this has been a powerful conversation tonight. All of you have shared some powerful nuggets tonight in helping people with this whole idea of influence. And so I want to close with this here, with this last quote that really, really spoke to me when I saw it. And I said, yeah, we can close. And so I want to read it. It says, put yourself completely under the influence of Jesus, so that he may think his thoughts in your mind, do his work through your hands, for you will be all powerful with him to strengthen you. And that really spoke to me in the area of influence, is that it's not enough to have a good heart. It's not enough to just want to see people win, because we see this phrase thrown out a lot everywhere. I just want everybody to win. I just want to see people win, and I just want to see people get all they can get out of life. And that's a great intent. However, if Jesus is not really the seed of that influence, then it can very, very quickly turn into something else, and you can become dangerous. So as we close, I want you all to speak to everyone who has been listening to us tonight, and I'm thankful to everyone who's been on with us tonight, who's been listening, and some people who will even see this after this broadcast is over, who may be influencer. They may be an influencer. They may be a digital content creator. They may be a social media influencer. And then we have people who follow and listen to these people. And so I want you all to speak to that quote, and I want you to give them wisdom and some counsel, whatever you're led to say, whatever you're led to give, to kind of help them not only to navigate the field of influence and that's out here in social media and online and everywhere, not only to help them navigate, but then also let them know that how important it is that Jesus is at the center of it all. And so I want to go with this time Lady T, then we'll go to Pastor Linwood, and we'll close with Pastor Gabriel.
What I would like to say is that for those that are in that are influencing, some of them, like you said earlier, some of them don't even realize that they are influencing others. But for those, and I applaud you, thank you for those that are just being who they are called to be. You have those that are actually influenced by just an influencer. I would say to you that people are watching you. And we are the first partakers of what we want to exhibit. And with that being said, is we have to examine our hearts in truth. We have to be honest. We don't need to project what we are not. We do not need to speak to as if we have arrived in certain places that we haven't, because if the smartest person is the person that's following someone, and that as I said earlier, is remaining a student. You're always in a place of wanting to understand, and understanding, even as influencers, that the greatest thing is to have the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God, according to Isaiah 11, understanding his spirits is what we should also have. And not to project something that we're not, and things that's not of his spirit. So if I could encourage you, is to, sometimes we have to reset, and we have to stop, and we have to examine ourselves to see if we are really on the right road, if we are teaching in truth, if we are demonstrating in truth, if we are speaking in truth. People of all kinds, we know when you're lying. So it's really no use to doing it. If we do things in truth, it can really impact others. So I would just ask that we examine ourselves and just stop, just stop for a moment. Look at ourselves. If it's things in us that has not been dealt with, let's deal with them. So when we do speak and we influence others, or we're talking to others, we're talking from a place of truth and honesty. So keep going, but stop and make stops along the way, just to make sure you are in alignment with what you're saying. That's all I have.
Hey,
All right.
that was wonderful. I'm gonna be very brief because I think we've covered so much and given people a lot to chew on tonight. Um, I'm honored to have been on the platform with you guys, and I thank God for the content that you have shared and the opinions that you have shared. Let me say this as it goes to influencers, including myself. We have to be careful. We just have to be careful in what we share as influencers, because there's someone always watching, and there is a level of accountability that we will all have to be held to one day. Even if you feel like Lady T has quoted her father a lot, I feel like I'm dishonoring mine by not quoting him, so I got to throw a couple in there. Um, he had two sayings that I think apply tonight. One was, "The life you save may be your own, and the things that proceed from our mouth sometimes have a way of coming back to us." So we have to be careful what we release from our mouth, because life, the power of life and death is in the tongue. So we have to, really be careful what we let proceed from our mouth to the people of God's ears, because sometimes they hang on by what it is we say. I operate, I don't call myself a prophet. My wife calls me a prophet. She put the tag on. Uh, I don't call myself a prophet. People call me a prophet because I operate in the prophetic here and there. But one thing I'm careful not to do is to speak anything into anybody's life that I know that I didn't hear from God, because there has to be an accountability factor there.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about being influential, and we're talking about manipulation, and we're talking about impact, all of those things kind of line up to where there's a very thin line between each. And because we operate in the prophetic, Pastor Gabriel, because we operate in the gift and the anointing, doesn't mean that because we thought it, God said it, but it's when we hear it, God says it. So we have to be careful in what it is we release in this earth realm, because we don't want the spiritual implications of being dangerous with the things that God has trusted us with to become manipulation rather than influence and impact.
That's good.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor
Yeah.
Linwood. Pastor Gabriel.
Lady T, Pastor Linwood, Blair, I just want to say it's an absolute honor to be on this platform tonight as well. I just echo the words and the sentiments of my brother, Pastor Linwood. What an impactful night. So much valid, thorough information. I would highly recommend those that have just logged on, if you were logging on now, to go back. Once this gets posted, go back because you may be influencing someone and you don't even know it. You didn't know. But now that you have been made aware of it, now you're responsible for the content that you push out. You're responsible for the words. I tell our church all the time, tell in discipleship, you're not responsible for what you don't know.
Mm.
Now that you have been brought into an awareness of it, you are responsible for the content. You're responsible for the words. Um, but I would say the words and just again, the pastor in me, the the passionate millennial who uh, can see where uh, uh, almost Peter went with the crowd. Jesus feeds 5,000 people who were there because they were being influenced by what Jesus can do rather than who he was. And they're all leaving. Pastor Jesus is moving on. And when they're
Mm.
looking around, Peter says, "Hey, Jesus, all your whole crowd you're following is leaving. What are you going to do?" Jesus said, "You want to leave too? Do you want to leave too?" And you know what Peter says? I love these words. "Where shall I go? If only you have words of life. Your words are spirit and they are life." Every word that comes out of our mouth, especially as sons and daughters of God, we are having awareness of that. We have to know that our words have power and they cause life in other people's lives. And so may your influence be used to affect change, not just in your church. Let it be affect change in your community. Let it affect change in your city. Let it affect change in your neighborhood. Most importantly, let it affect change in your home. God bless you.
Awesome.
Wow. Thank you so much. Listen, I truly appreciate you all being a part of the locker room tonight. This was powerful. There was so much shared tonight and so much given. And I know that everyone who has been tuning in tonight and watching, I'm just from the comments, people have been blessed and they have been touched by this time of conversation. So I thank you all so much. And I would encourage those who did get on late, please go back and watch the replay so you can catch the full thrust of the conversation from beginning to end, because there was so much shared. And so I'm grateful to Pastor Linwood, to Pastor Gabriel, to my wife for being with us tonight and bringing so much value to the locker room as we endeavor to continue to present uh, great content like this that really makes you think and really makes you take introspective of yourself and your environment and things around you. And we just want to have quality conversation and talk about real things, talk about real concerns, real issues, and really be a source of help, a source of inspiration, a source of empowerment, a source of alignment, a source of adjustment, whatever it may be that people need. We endeavor to offer that here on the locker room in a safe space, in a safe place where there's no judgment. There's none of that. We don't fight. We don't argue on here. We just talk. We just have conversation, and we look to be inspired by hearing different perspectives. And so, with that, we're going to close here tonight. Thank you to everyone who has joined us on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. We truly appreciate you continuing to support the locker room each month. Some of you are always on with me every month and you share it. You share the flyer, and I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of you, not just in Western New York, but in other places, cities, and states where you're watching from. Thank you so much for spending your Monday evening with us here on the locker room. And we will be back next month in the month of September with some more great content. We'll have some more powerful guests on the locker room for you next month. So be looking out for the flyers and the information on social media. And we hope that you would join us again next month on the Locker Room. So we thank you. We appreciate you. Good night to everyone. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll see you next month on the Locker Room. Good night.
Good night.